Okay, so this is module 5. We're now going to start thinking of our own Minecraft experience that we can fit into our teaching and where it would fit in. It could be before you actually do a lab or before you teach something, and it's usually, it works really well with complex ideas, difficult concepts that students have trouble working with. So I'm going to use an example, because I'm a science teacher, of DNA extraction. And so I'll step you through what I think, how you implement technology into your curriculum, which is more of a design process, and it's encouraged that you sort of research through it. So it's like what you do with action research. And so let's get going. So as I mentioned, it's really important that you set it up so it is sort of an action research paper, and then you can come back to it, writing down your ideas of what went right, what went wrong, how you implemented it, what technology requirements, and then keep coming back to it and keep your iterations going. So the guide, and I'll write out on paper, so you've got a copy, and I'll also put this PowerPoint into module 5. But work out, well, what are your goals? What's this lesson developed for? Now, there's a huge amount of work that can go into this, but you'll also get a huge amount back if it's done right. Now, this is sort of a top-end experience for the students. But once he's designed it, it's there, and he can use it, over and over with his classes. And then he can also start thinking about what went right, what how is he going to improve it for the next class. You write down your learning objectives. You can organize your project in stages, and then completing your tasks. How did it go, and then reflect and think about how you're going to assess and what sort of future projects you might have. So this example is a DNA extraction lab, and this fellow Dan Bloom, who's a biology teacher from New York City, uses a game-based model to focus on implementing his Minecraft into his curriculum. So if you don't know what DNA extraction is, it's a really cool practical, and you use these different chemicals to strip down and get the DNA out of fruit. Like you can use kiwi fruit, and then you use different chemicals like meat tenderizer. I mean, there's lots of different things you can use. You also use soap to strip away the cell wall, and but it's getting the students to understand the chemicals that they're using to get into the cell to get the DNA out of the nucleus. So he also used Minecraft Education Edition, and he used a game designer actually to help him build the world. So again, I'm saying this is a top-end kind of experience. And he used, this is a pre-lab activity before he did the cell extraction practical in the lab. Okay, so his project goals was to create a model where students could explore and manipulate. So they have to use different chemicals, which are like their pickaxes. And if that chemical doesn't work at getting into the cell wall, then they try a different pickaxe, which might be a salt or an acid or a base, and or a soap, and until they find the right one, they won't get in. So when they do the actual lab, then they can make sense of the DNA extraction. What did it mean? Because when you look at stuff in a micro level in biology, you're not really seeing what's going on. It's sort of, it's very out there for students and adults. So he also taught the content. So he had a proper lesson before he did the pre-lab activity, and then he did the practical. And he also assessed through it with formative and summative assessment. So here's his learning objectives, and it's, a lot of biology stuff. so I won't focus on that too much, but you'd write down your learning objectives. And then organizing your project, he had handouts that acted as a guide for explanation, and he had questions on them so he could sort of assess through the project, and instructions for how to set up. So they actually had decided to do it as a single user, and they then had to download this into Minecraft Education. So students had to do this individually. He's saying that it took about 5 to 7 hours to set it up in Minecraft, probably longer if you're a newbie at it. And the project duration was 1 class period where they got to go through the cell, and the environment was Minecraft edu. So completing the task. So the most challenging part of the experience is setting up the Minecraft on the computers, and each student had their own instructions on how to set it up. And you can add more to completing this task, as such as the assessment and the guide that they use. And then it's always important to reflect on whenever you're designing anything, what went right, what went wrong, what would I do next time, and also how are you going to fit an assessment into this? Is it summative? Is it formative? But I think the handout with the questions, it helped guide the students, and the students could work out which salts or bases or salts were needed to open up to get into the DNA. Then he talked about future projects, and anyway, there's a clip that he's talking about what he did, and so if you go and watch that, it'll all make sense. And then what I'd like you to do as an activity is write down these steps as a template and start thinking about where you might use Minecraft in your own teaching.